All right, we're recording.
All right, welcome back to Nick's house. This episode is on capital punishment. So,
Capital.
AKA the death penalty, specifically as it pertains to the United States of America. We wanted to give a quick historical update slash summary. Where we're at in the modern times with the death penalty as we know it today. So, in 1972, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down a capital punishment case. It was Furman versus Georgia, and they cited the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution, which is all about cruel and unusual punishment. And they didn't want cruel and unusual punishment to be administered by the states, so the court reduced all death sentences pending at that time to life imprisonment, which subsequently made the states institute reforms, and the court affirmed the legality of capital punishment in 1976.
So basically, they banned capital punishment for a few years, and then that was overturned.
A moratorium on capital punishment was instituted, and it was overturned in 1976 in the case of Gregg versus Georgia.
Oh, Greg.
So since 1976, 7,800 defendants have been sentenced to death, but only 1,400 have actually been executed thus far. All right, so I wanted to go point by point, and we will just kind of talk as we go along. So my first point that I wanted to make a case against the death penalty was the concept of innocence. So innocent people and the concept of innocence with a CE. And so for me personally, the idea that an innocent person, even a single innocent person, could be caught up in this system and then actually executed, for me personally is it's the only one I really need.
Okay.
The idea that one innocent person could be killed in this system means that system needs to be stopped. Yeah. So what do you think about
that? I think that's pretty illogical.
Okay, why?
Because like we said before we started recording, people have been falsely accused of sexual assault. Something like 5%. I saw on the internet an article, a scholarly article, that about 5% of sexual assault claims are officially verified to be false. Okay. Those are only ones that have been clearly established to have been false.
Okay.
Do you think that one man or woman might still be living with the consequences of being falsely accused of sexual assault?
Well, I think.
Yes. So but the point is, it's not logical to say that in order to avoid the risk of inappropriately punishing somebody for a crime that they didn't commit, then we should just never punish them. I think that when you say we shouldn't ever have capital punishment because one person might be wrongfully executed, I don't think that's a logical jump to make. You wouldn't make that jump in pretty much any other thing, any other related scenario.
Well, if you bring up, sexual harassment, that's an apples and oranges comparison though, because sexual harassment, you punish that person, what happens? They go to jail, right? Mm-hmm. You don't kill them for sexual harassment. You don't kill them for rape. You don't rape them for rape, right? They just go to a jail cell, right? Yeah. So the death penalty, the reason it's different, it's above and beyond all of those other kinds of punishments, is because once you make that punishment and you execute it, there's no turning back. That person's life is gone. So if later it's determined that they're innocent, you can't undo it. Now, if someone's falsely accused of sexual harassment or rape or whatever, theft or rape, all those other things, they're in the jail cell. They've been sitting there. Now, it sucks that they were falsely accused and then falsely convicted, but you can exonerate them and let them out. Yeah. Now, once you've taken someone's life, you can't do that. There is no reparation for that. And that's, in my opinion, that's a moral stain on... And honestly, for me, it's made a murderer of all of us. So if we, through the hand of the government, kill an innocent person, a neutralized, arrested, innocent person in a jail cell waiting on death row, if we kill that person with our tax money, with our elected officials, they are murderers, and we subsequently are all murderers too. We're vicariously murderers, right?
Okay, so let's say that happens. Now, so a case like that, that's not unprecedented. That's definitely happened. There's clearly documented examples of people who have been exonerated after they've been executed. That's true. So we've also gone to war, and we've killed innocent people during in stupid wars. We've made mistakes. Blood is on our hands, unquestionably. Does that mean that war is never justified?
I would say that war is is also apples and oranges, because in war you're dealing with self-defense. Like, you're not going to say, oh, is that enemy combatant, is he potentially innocent or guilty, or maybe I shouldn't be here on this battlefield, because it doesn't matter. You're getting shot at. You have to return fire. You have to defend yourself. Now, of course, there could be a lot of layers to this and crazy factors and everything, and that's why there's such a thing as a war crimes tribunal, and oh, did what you do, did it actually make sense, or were you just like viciously massacring people? Yeah. Like if we lined up a whole bunch of let's say.
So okay,
Syrians, right?
I see the point that you're making. We had this conversation like 6 months ago. You think that war is definitely justified sometimes. Yeah. It's even if it means that there's a possibility that innocent people could get caught up in the crossfire.
Right.
So the way I see it, capital punishment is in a way, it's similar in a lot of ways, because there are a lot of reasons for capital punishment that we're going to talk about in the coming minutes. You could say it's a war on the crime of homicide.
Okay.
And occasionally there's going to be innocent people who get caught up in that. That's not to excuse it, but I'm just saying we can't say, oh, because we might kill an innocent person, we can never go to war. War is never justified. I don't think you can say that about capital punishment as well. You can't say, oh, well, there's a risk that we might kill an innocent person, so therefore we can't execute somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer. I don't think that's just not a logical jump to make.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay, you're saying if you have evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, like this
absolutely,
guy is for sure a killer. I don't want to dwell too much on the war comparison, because I still believe it's like completely. Okay. It's definitely an apples and oranges scenario.
I don't think so. I think it's very similar.
What if during war you're a soldier out there and you kill innocent people, and you knew you killed innocent people, but you were like, oh, it was war. I went, and you said whatever you said, but they said, no, you killed those kids. You didn't have to do that. You knew that village was full of kids. But why'd you kill them? And you say, well, in my defense, this is war, and they're going to say, no, you massacred them, right?
Well, that's so you talk about apples. That's an apples to oranges comparison. So if I'm there, I would never do this, but if I'm out there massacring children that I know and I know they're innocent, there's no scenario in the world where that would be justified.
Okay, what if you accidentally massacre a bunch of children? Like you accidentally bomb a village and there's
that's happened.
That's just war.
That's happened. It's horrible.
No punishment.
I think there's punishment justified in that case,
but not death penalty for you.
I mean, it would be a case by case. It'd be case by case, and I think that too ties well in with the death penalty, because there's a difference between, let's say Billy kills Mary Sue. So Billy is accused of killing Mary Sue. The DNA evidence supports it. We have lots of reliable witnesses that support it. Everybody's acting with integrity and honesty. Everyone's giving the best testimony that they can. All the scientists, whatever.
In a pretend world where all
right,
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And it turns out that it wasn't. I forgot what the guy's name was. Billy. It was his twin brother, Bubba, and it comes out 5 years after he's executed.
Right.
That's horrible. That's an appalling tragedy, and it also means that Bubba has probably killed more people, or he's done bad things. That's not the same thing as, let's say in Baltimore, for example, Daquan gets accused of murdering so and so, and the city of Baltimore fumbles the investigation, and another gang member bribes a city official to falsely accuse this person, and he gets sent on, and this guy gets sent on death row. That's a completely different scenario. That's corruption in the system. That's people conspiring to frame an innocent man to be executed. That's not the same thing.
I agree with you, but in a practical world, in the real world, there's no stopping bribery. There's no stopping corruption. You can do the best you can to stop it, but you're never going to actually stop it. But what you can do is, as a matter of policy, say, we won't allow the ultimate final sentence to be ever given, because at any given time, while we're not fully aware, a bribe is happening, or a false testimony is given. You can't. There's no way you could possibly police every single move there. But you can create the overall policy of, hey, we don't give the ultimate punishment. We will lock someone up tentatively, waiting for proper evidence to come out. And if they do, God forbid, spend 15 years in a jail cell, but then they're exonerated because evidence comes out later, or a person who gave false testimony, said, I was scared for my life, the mob was telling me I had to do this, or else they were going to burn down my grandma's restaurant, or whatever the heck it is. Later, they're exonerated. And they're still alive to be exonerated.
Right, yeah.
But if you sentence them to death, no exoneration can ever happen, right?
That's true.
But when you said about, like, Jeffrey Dahmer, like these insane cases, it makes me want to go to one of my other points, which is, what is real justice? Is killing Jeffrey Dahmer, and this is probably just something that every person is going to have to ask themselves.
Right, yeah.
It's like one of these very internal questions. Like, is killing someone like Jeffrey Dahmer, who is probably like 99.99% guilty for sure, like as far as we could tell,
he's admitted to it. He's given detailed testimony,
DNA evidence, all of that's there.
So can I ask you a quick question?
Do you feel like it's justice to kill him, or do you feel like making him sit in a jail cell the rest of his days is actual justice? Because killing him, honestly, in my opinion, killing him as far as punishment goes, it's like letting him off easy. Now they're just, unless, I guess, if you believe in there's a hell and you're sending them to hell to be like, pineapples shoved up their asshole for eternity or something like that. Maybe you believe
that would,
like that.
For some people, that wouldn't be hell.
Hey, maybe, but that's a metaphysical question that's way beyond this.
Okay, so I do want to go there eventually, but for now, I just want to ask you, do you think that if there's evidence beyond the slightest shadow of a doubt that somebody has killed someone, do you think that capital punishment would be justified in that case? I'm talking like best case scenario, perfect information. There's like 10,000 cell phone camera recordings of it, or something like, I don't know. Just the guys confessed to it, a guy or girl. The DNA evidence.
I've asked myself this question, and my internal answer, my personal answer is, I'd rather see them rot in jail.
Okay.
I would rather because when I think about, for me, and again, this is why it's hard for us to put our minds into their minds.
But let me ask, do you think that in that case it would not be wrong for them to be executed?
Would it be wrong?
Would it not?
Okay,
would it not be wrong?
The best way to punish
so
them
I understand that your preference. You think that it would be more of a punishment to keep them alive, because in that case it would be worse than death. But if say a state were to decide to execute the person, that wouldn't be wrong in that case. It wouldn't be wrong in that case.
Oh, that's a very good question. Yeah, if they were perfect scenario, all the evidence is there, everything you could ever hope for and ask for. Is it better that they're taken out of this life, or that they rot in a jail cell? I just truly
no. I'm not asking which one is better. Do you think that it would be morally right in that case?
No, I don't, because I think that the moral implication of the person who has to inject the poison into their veins, that person is taking a life. Never mind who it is.
So you don't think that they're even justified in that case to take a life?
I really don't, because it's a neutralized, arrested individual who has no more ability to impact and kill anybody else.
What about the fact that they're using up resources to keep? So when someone goes to prison, we're paying to keep them in existence. They're using up they're using up pennies that could go to something else, some other cause.
Right. But that's another point that I was going to get to. As my third point is the cost to.
Right. We'll get to that. But I just want to understand for my own sake that you don't think that even in that case it would be morally wrong to take that person's life.
I still feel like it's murder and killing. I think it's or not murder. Maybe murder is a weird word, but it's still killing a human being, and it's not for a self-defense purpose. Like if somebody.
What about the defense of society, defense of the well-being of society?
I just don't see that way.
So
isolated.
Okay, so what I don't understand.
They're isolated.
What I don't understand, and I understand that we fundamentally disagree on this, so I'm not going to push too hard on it.
Yeah.
Because that's just going to make everyone frustrated.
Right.
But I don't understand how you can say that war is sometimes justified, but it's never the right thing to do to take the life of a person who has with beyond the slightest shadow of a doubt killed somebody or murdered somebody. I don't understand how that doesn't seem consistent to me.
It's the concept of eye for an eye. This person is neutralized and arrested. They're locked in a jail cell.
The threat is removed. That's what you're saying.
The threat's removed.
The threat is removed. What about the danger to prison guards and to people who are in prison? Because prison killings are a thing. You do realize that, right?
That's true.
So are you saying let's say locked up in isolation forever, they're never come into contact with another human. There's no way that they could escape.
No, that's a very good point. That's very worthy of bringing up. In prison violence, it's always a thing. It's always going to be a thing. I think I appreciate why you're asking this because these are like in the not in the practical world. Like you're asking these questions. These are very good questions to ask. But I guess I've just been I'm too lodged in the practicality of all of these concepts to, I guess in a perfect world where there still are prisons and there still are prison guards, I still can't, I just can't, I'm no longer of the opinion that I want to give, I want my taxpayer money to go towards individuals, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4, whoever they are, however many they are, that inject the thing into the vein, or they hook them up to the chair, or I don't want to have any part in.
You don't want any part in that. Okay.
Yeah.
I fundamentally, extraordinarily strongly disagree with that conclusion, but I can respect that. I can respect that. I understand. I know people who,
for all intents and purposes, they're a neutralized, arrested individual that's locked in a cell. Yes, there's a chance that they'll sharpen a,
So, but the point, and I'm sorry,
toothbrush and shiv someone.
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You just don't want any of your tax dollars. You don't want any hand in taking another person's life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, I'll say, you're a pacifist then, and I think that the next step in your logic is to also be opposed to all forms of war, because your tax dollars.
It's not the same.
When we go crusading and we go kill people who are members of ISIS, your tax dollars are paying for that. Someone in government has made the determination that we are justified in taking other people's lives, even at the risk of killing innocent people.
That's why you vote for people that agree with your value system.
Yeah. I'm just saying, for you, I don't think you've made that logical leap yet, but I think that either you're going to change your mind and you're going to say that capital punishment is sometimes justified. Sometimes.
For what reason, though?
Because it just acting on the strict logic of it, that's just what it makes sense. So you're going to do that, or you're going to go to the next step and say that you're pacifist. And don't get me wrong, I can respect that. I mean, I have friends who.
I'm no crusader.
No. Look, trust me. If you believe in pacifism, I can respect that. I truly respect that.
I don't know what's your definition of pacifism.
Pacifism, you refuse to take another person's life. You would rather die than take another person's life.
If I'm defending myself, my home, I'm gonna kill them.
Yeah.
If somebody breaks into my house, they're dead.
Yeah. Or someone, let's say you get married, you have kids, and somebody's messing with. You're gonna kill the motherfucker.
I'm going to kill them to defend my family, defend myself, preserve my family.
So
myself.
I think you're, and we're gonna go into the. There's a lot more.
I'm not preserving anything by killing Jeffrey Dahmer, who is in chains in a jail cell. For me, those are 2 completely different scenarios. On the battlefield. Mm-hmm. I'm defending myself because bullets are whizzing past my head. Yeah. In my home, when someone intrudes and breaks in and attacks me or my loved ones, I'm defending myself.
Right.
And they're dead.
Right.
If I have my choice, they're dead.
Yeah.
Now, if that same person, let's say I survived that burglary or whatever, burglary, rape, burglary, murder, rape, and the police have that person in custody, I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak for myself and say that I don't want that person to be executed, although I hate that person, and I really fucking never, I don't want to have anything to do with them ever again. At the same time, at that point, they're neutralized.
Right.
And at that point, I'm going to feel a moral implication to not have anything to do with them being killed.
Okay.
In fact, and like I said earlier, and this might be the like grotesque side of me coming out or something, but I would prefer that they rot in a jail cell the rest of their days.
Because you think that's worse than dying.
I honestly feel like it's a better punishment.
Okay.
But maybe that's just a fundamental. Would you rather kill people or would you rather make them rot in prison?
Right.
You know, I feel like my position of making them rot in prison.
Okay.
Not only does it facilitate a proper punishment, according to my opinion, but it also allows for, in case they're innocent, in other cases besides the one that I just introduced, to be vindicated and exonerated from being guilty. Like, oh, they were actually not guilty. Okay,
right.
Get them out of jail.
So, okay, when it comes to that, we keep coming to that, the possibility of them being exonerated. Yeah. And this is where I soften a lot on my ideas of capital punishment. I think that I think that capital punishment needs to be extraordinarily rare, and I think that if someone is seeking the capital punishment, there has to be an extremely high standard of evidence, you know.
But that's not how it is.
As you've seen. Right. But we'll get into that. Don't get me wrong, but I want to state very clearly what I think. So, and also issues like premeditated murder versus the heat of the moment, or someone being drunk and getting mad and killing somebody. That I can see why people would argue that capital punishment is necessary in those cases, and to me it's very much a case by case thing.
Is not or is?
Is what? Oh. Is what?
Did you say is or is not?
It is a case by case thing for me. Oh. So I'm very I'm afraid of the implications of the people who are just like, yeah, he killed that person, kill him, execute him. That scares me. That's like that feels like mob justice to me.
Yeah, me too.
So there's two key things two key phrases that we need to work into our conversation. One of them is equal treatment under the law, and the other thing is due process. So, and those things can't be corrupted, and they have to be carried out in the correct way. So you can't just say like, oh, Billy Bob just killed Ethel, hang him, and then the mob comes and lynches him. No, we can't. That can't happen. That makes me think of Brett Kavanaugh, the whole Brett Kavanaugh fiasco. It's like, even if it seems like everything seems real clear cut, as we're going to get into in the rest of the podcast, there are very clear cases of 7 false witnesses coming. 7, 8, 9, 10 false witnesses coming, giving a false testimony, and the structural conspiracy to have someone executed to protect the status quo, even though people involved know full well that this man is innocent. I think
it could be the mafia, it could be the police.
Yeah,
I mean, all kinds of corruption could be happening.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I think that.
But this is our system.
Yeah. And I think in those cases, well, when you say our system, there are lots of systems in the U.S. We're a nation of 325 million people.
They're human systems, all of them. They're all human systems, all very much capable of being. They're all vulnerable to being bribed. They're all vulnerable to just human error. And I mean, that's one of my other points I was going to get to at some point. But yeah. Sorry.
Right. So all that to say, like, and that's why I said earlier that I think we might have more in common than you think. I do feel fear that innocent people could be executed, have been executed.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. I'm not going to act like I don't want to minimize that.
I don't think there's any.
But I can't make the jump from that to saying that capital punishment is never, ever, ever justified. I just can't make that leap.
I think it's kind of like and this might be a weird analogy that I'm just coming up with now, but like when I'm in the springtime, in the summer, when I'm working out in my yard and I'm, clearing the weeds, right? years ago, before I knew better, we used Roundup. You know, Roundup, this super strong weed killer.
Yeah.
Okay, if you ever use Roundup, you know what happens with Roundup is you spray it on a weed, and it doesn't just kill that weed, it actually makes that whole little spot barren. Yeah. Completely makes the dirt there, nothing can grow there.
Yeah.
And after I realized that, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and pull the weeds. Because as tedious as that is, it's a lot easier to just spray Roundup.
Yeah.
But you're looking at just this pockmarked lawn of where stuff can't grow. You literally have to replace the dirt. And I guess for me, that's kind of what this feels like. It's like if you take a policy of, all right, we have a death penalty and we use it. Okay, well, when do we use it? Well, that's up to the judge. And that's up to the court. And that's up to the jury. Well, what jury? What court? What judge? Like those roles change from year to year. There's a new election, a new judge, you know. And in my research, I found out that during election season, judges tend to convict more often when they're leading up to an election season because it looks better. Bill Clinton is guilty of actually, well, he's guilty of it. That's a weird way to word. Bill Clinton put his stamp of approval.
Not Slick Willie.
Yeah, he put his stamp of approval basically on the execution of a mentally ill man, and he did it for political expediency. And what I can't escape is this is the world we live in. This is the facts of the matter. Is that it's mired in politics, and if we can just make a broad policy of we don't kill, no matter who it is, we lock them up.
Yeah.
And now you're almost with me to where you're just like, I want this to be extremely rare, super, super rare, and I want to be there with you too. I really do.
Yeah.
But I just don't feel like the system is practical enough to adopt that and implement it properly. Right. I think that some states have done that fairly well, up in the Northeast. They have the death penalty is still legal there, but it's super, super rare. And that could be for a whole bunch of different reasons and factors. But I'm willing to go with you there to a good extent. You know, I could compromise on that if there was some way to really corral this and get it to be to where it's truly super, super rare, you know, seldom used. But maybe I'm just too skeptical.
Well, how about we don't apply a time, like we don't define the time frame or the rate. We just say that only guilty people are executed. That's in an ideal world. That's what we want.
All right.
And the way, and so I want to run with your Roundup metaphor. So you're trying to kill one weed in a patch of grass. You spray the entire patch of grass with Roundup. It kills, you know what? Let's just say 2 square feet of lawn space. All that for one weed. That's ridiculous.
Well, you thought you were just killing one weed,
right? But if you're taking let's say, a 5 by 5 foot plot of ground, and you want to get rid of all the weeds there, and there's like 3 blades of grass in that section, then in that case, Roundup makes a lot more sense. You see what I'm saying?
You're saying you're willing to sacrifice 3 blades of grass.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a bad analogy because those are 3 people.
Yeah. I know, but the point I'm trying to make though is I think your fears might be a little bit out of proportion. I don't think these that false conviction rates are as dramatic as you might think they are.
All it takes is one. How many do you think there's been at least one false?
Oh, I know there's been more. I know there's been at least one. Yeah.
Like a wrongly accused, wrongly convicted.
Of course.
In the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years.
I know there has.
Right. So for me, that it makes my heart sink. Because what if that was your brother? What if that was you? What if that was your mother? What if, someone you loved? Yeah. What if it was someone who you, because you're so close to them, you knew that they would never do such a thing. And you even looked at the evidence and saw how specious
it would depend on why. But
they're going to do it. and that's the fact. That's what's happening right now, right?
Yeah, but it's. I just
okay.
Yeah, I just don't think you can make the I just don't think you can make the jump. It's like
so if your brother, like think of your brother, you love him so much, right? You love him.
Okay.
You do anything for him, okay? But then he, whatever, make up a scenario. He kills a guy. He brutally kills a guy.
So I'm gonna stop you right there. I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
I know where you're going with this. It would be horrible. There's a lot of things that could happen to me or someone I love that are horrible.
Sure.
And I still do those things. I still take those risks. I'm simply not going. Of course not. I'm not going. I cannot make the jump from that to saying that capital punishment is never justified. Because it's always morally wrong. I just can't make that. It's not logical.
But what's logical about killing a person who's in handcuffs? Like, I don't see that. That's where I'm just lost.
Well, we can talk about that. That's a great segue. Great segue.
To which part?
To all the other things that we got to talk about.
All right. So, cost to taxpayer. This is a much more like, cold kind of evidence type stuff. Not so much the moral or the other stuff, but. So how much does it cost to kill a person? So this is in the real world, and we can say, well, we should reform all of this. Okay, but here's the situation.
What does that have to do with whether or not, does that mean if it's expensive, therefore it's wrong?
No. I'm sorry. I thought we already talked about all that enough. I was moving on to the money thing.
Well,
it's just one of my points.
Right. Okay. So I think the whole conversation about the cost, it's expensive. I get it.
Yeah.
But prosecuting crime is expensive. And the cost of performing justice is expensive. The problem isn't that we punish crime. The problem is that people commit those crimes. So when you talk about social costs of punishing crime, those costs, setting aside corruption, stuff like that, the costs, that should be attributed to the criminal because they did the wrong thing. They're the one who made the whole thing necessary. People doing wrong things.
What do you mean? What do you mean the cost should be attributed to the criminal?
The cost of justice, basically. When someone does something wrong.
The monetary cost of justice?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm saying.
Well, these people don't have that much money.
So. I'm just saying, I know. I'm just saying, but the reason why we're paying those millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Excuse me, is because somebody has done something wrong, and it has to be injustice has to be carried out.
Right.
So somebody, say rapes a 5-year-old or something like that.
Yeah.
We have to spend a ton of money on locking that person up. We have to spend money on equal process. We have to spend money on equal protection of the law. We can't just do mob justice. We can't just string them up, lynch them in the street. We just don't do that in our country.
Why not?
Why not what?
Why don't we lynch them for raping a little girl?
Because due process. Because
Why don't we rape them for raping a little girl?
Well, if you want to do that, I won't stop you.
If you kill someone, so then we pay the state to kill you. If you rape someone, then we pay the state to rape you. See how that's not where I'm going with this. What I'm saying is that to set it right, like to convict someone of raping a child, for example, and putting them in prison, it costs money. Yeah, of course.
Whose fault is it that we're having to spend that money?
It's their fault. They committed the crime.
It's a criminal, yeah. So, I believe that.
So what?
I guess in order to make my point, I have to make another leap here. I have to go from saying that sometimes capital adjustment or capital punishment is morally right to saying that there are times when capital punishment is a moral obligation. Because it's the right thing to do.
Why is it the right thing to do? I don't understand. Why is killing a murderer, like someone kills someone, so we kill them.
Right.
Okay, let's do it your way. That's what we did. Okay, someone rapes someone.
No,
we rape them.
No.
Why don't we do that? Think about that. Why don't we rape rapists? Because we don't want to be rapists, right? You want to pay the judge to rape someone he convicts? or a member of the jury to rape someone they convict because they're a rapist.
Stuff pineapples up their butt.
Right, you know, it's like it's a tit for tat, it's an eye for an eye concept that just doesn't translate into any other form of punishment. For some reason, we're okay with killing a killer, but we're not okay with raping a rapist. We're not okay with stealing from a thief. We're not okay with, you know, like we don't do those things. It doesn't make any sense to us. That other stuff is like, what? What are you talking about? Yeah, right. Well, I carry that same concept of logic into the killing one. Okay, they killed a person. They brutally killed someone.
Right.
They murdered, they raped, and then brutally murdered 5 people. So do we rape and then brutally murder them? You know what I mean? Like.
Right. Okay. So this is where the conversation gets interesting.
Yeah. So
because now
method of execution.
But okay. So now we're venturing into metaphysical territory, and this is we are.
All right, go ahead.
I mean, that's a good question. Why? As you were talking, I was thinking through this. Like, why does my intuition tells me that it's okay to take the life of a person for committing murder, or maybe certain other egregious crimes,
but not rape.
But not rape. Like, why is that fundamentally different thing?
Right.
So rape is sex, right? Rape is always wrong, and it falls in the category of sex. A sexual act, right?
Isn't it worse than murder?
So I'm trying to make a point. So play along with me. Rape is a form of sex. It falls under the umbrella of a broad definition of sexual activity, right?
It's a sexual thing.
And it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that all sexual activity is bad.
No.
Right? So murder is always wrong, correct?
Yeah, the term murder.
And it falls under the broader window of killing. And but killing isn't always bad.
No, because you can kill in self-defense.
Are you in favor of
You can kill in self-defense. You can't rape in self-defense.
No, I don't think so. I don't know. So
I had to rape him. You don't understand.
And I have to be. I mean,
maybe
I have to be honest. I don't know how to express why it's okay. Why I think taking a life of a person, and I think it's because fundamentally, I guess I would say that taking the life of a person isn't always the wrong thing to do.
Because.
Well, do you think that
besides self-defense,
taking someone off life support to let them pass away? There are times when we do that, right?
Which is technically killing.
Yeah, you're taking someone's life.
Or even if someone says, "Hey, I want to die. I'm in pain.
Yeah.
Let me die."
Right. So
I think the context is definitely.
Yeah. So can we agree that killing someone is not always the wrong thing to do?
No, for sure. It's definitely very dependent on the context. Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you can think of a scenario where killing a person is the right thing to do.
You certainly can.
To put them out of their misery or
self-defense,
something like that.
Dr. Kevorkian style stuff, like when people are in so much pain or they're looking down the rest of their life, they're paraplegic and they've just elected to say, I choose to no longer live. I mean, I personally feel like that's a choice that they can make. But it's still completely different than someone who's in handcuffs, who's in a jail cell. Like killing a neutralized criminal, it's different. It's not the same thing. It's just not for me. But I appreciate why it is for you. Why it's the same thing for you.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, and this is the fundamental part.
Well, and we can't avoid the metaphysical aspect of this, because fundamentally, I believe that there is a supernatural precedent for morality.
Like, okay, why you see things the way you do?
So informing my beliefs here is that there is a supernatural precedent for morality, that the good and bad things that we do have supernatural repercussions that we don't fully understand.
Let God sort them out, right?
No,
not like that.
Don't oversimplify what I'm saying. Like,
what do you mean then?
What I mean is that I'm saying that what I'm trying to say is that I think that humans sort of intuitively sense justice. Like, there's a lot of things that humans sense intuitively that they can't necessarily explain it in words. I understand that's dangerous. It's a slippery slope. But I think that fundamentally, in some cases, the only just action is to apply the death penalty for certain kind of crimes.
Okay, so I think we've basically laid it out. You feel fundamentally that killing, death penalty is in some cases the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm just not convinced of that.
Okay.
All right, so let's move on from like the concept of innocence and the concept of the moral thing.
Okay. And
talk about the money thing, because this does cost a lot of money. Right. To execute a person in our country costs a tremendous amount of money. And I went through state by state and to see like, what are these real costs? Which, you may already be like settled in your opinion of it.
Right,
but then you look at the cost and you say, well, I don't care. I don't care that it costs $51 million more each year for Florida because of their death row convictions, as opposed to if they just put these people in prison the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
It's like, because of the nature of our judicial system, as imperfect as it is, it costs, across the board, tremendous amounts of money more to convict them and execute them on death row than to house them the rest of their lives in prison. So, like, what do you think about that? The whole concept of the taxpayer money thing? Like, is it a waste of taxpayer money on that ground?
Well, if you look at it strictly from that perspective, then I could see where in some jurisdictions they would say, "Look, guys, it's too expensive to execute this person. We're just going to let them rot in prison until they just die of natural causes."
Yeah,
I can see that.
Totally segregate those two beliefs and feelings. Yeah. Okay.
So, but also, I would add on to this. I agree with you to that in that case. I could see a jurisdiction making that decision, but you have to ask why it's so expensive too. You have to look at the causes. Sure. Is it because of corruption and bribery, or is it because there's legal loopholes that allow people to drag this on forever and ever and ever? Sure. In that case, that then your energy shouldn't be going into abolishing capital punishment. Your energy ought to go into criminal justice reform. And it's harder. It's easier to just say, "Well, this is hard, so we'll just never do it." It's a lot harder to take these issues head on. But that's what I would say to that.
Good point.
But if if a jurisdiction decides that it's less of a burden on society to just let them rot in prison, that's their decision.
Fair enough.
I would again, alluding to what I said before, I would make the case that there are other social costs besides pure finances
that surpass the millions of dollars.
So
spend on
justice, like when a society is deprived of justice, it's incredibly damaging to a society. Like in Baltimore, for example, where you have where police abuses and people not getting justice and murderers, like in Baltimore has like a 40% homicide clearance rate. So 60% of homicides in Baltimore, not even an arrest is made.
Yeah,
that's damaging to a society. Yeah, it's got a lot of issues. But I'm getting lost in the weeds. My point is that there are other costs to society besides just pure finances. So
right, sure. Okay, but at least that fact is laid down, uncontroversial.
Yeah,
absolute fact. It does, monetarily wise, cost much more to run these death row cases than to just throw them away.
Well, I would want to see the numbers myself, but I trust.
I got these numbers for you.
I would want to dig more, but I can buy it.
Oklahoma capital cases cost taxpayers 3.2 times more than non-capital cases. Nebraska's taxpayers pay $1.5 million more. Oregon, $1.1 million more. Pennsylvania,
is that over the
$72 million more per execution?
Is that over the course of the whole of the life? Is it more than what? Keeping them in prison until they die?
Yeah. This is the amount of money that these states would save if they elected to just do the life in prison whole dealio.
Okay.
Even if they give them college and blah blah blah, TV, cable, whatever.
What is the source of all these costs? Where are these costs?
I put it right here in the notes. If you want to.
Well, yeah, but go over it. What are they?
Okay, the source is. I'll open it up. It's. All right. So. Header. It goes through. Oh, it's long. It's all these different states. All right. So this is from. These are studies that were aggregated by the Death Penalty Information Center, the website Death Penalty Information Center. It goes state by state. So for the state of Oklahoma, a study was done by P. Collins, M. Hickman, R. Barokowitz. It was titled Analysis of the Economic Cost of Capital Punishment in Oklahoma, April 2017. Okay, Oregon, next one. This one was A. Kaplan, P. Collins, V. Mayhew, Oregon's Death Penalty, Cost and Analysis, November 16, 2016. Nebraska, on and on. Pennsylvania, in Bramblia, Professor, Executing a Justice, so on and on. Indiana, Washington, Nevada, Kansas, Idaho, Colorado, California. These are all like a myriad of studies for all these different states.
Okay,
Maryland,
all right, yeah.
On.
So it costs more, but I'd want to know what I would need more information about those numbers, like what the costs go to, and if that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just
okay. So here's one for Maryland. We live in Maryland.
Okay, go for it.
Study reveals costs in Maryland: $186 million for 5 executions. A study released by the Urban Institute on March 6, 2008, forecast that the lifetime cost to taxpayers for the capitally prosecuted cases in Maryland since 1978 will be $186 million. That translates to $37.2 million for each of the state's 5 executions since the state reenacted the death penalty. The study estimates that the average cost to Maryland taxpayers for reaching a single death sentence is $3 million to $1.9 million more than the cost of a non-death penalty case.
So these are like legal fees.
This includes investigation, trial, appeals, and incarceration costs.
Okay.
The study examined 162 capital cases that were prosecuted between 1978 and 1999, found that those cases will cost $186 million more than what those cases would have cost had the death penalty not existed as a punishment at all.
Okay.
At every phase of the case,
according
to the study, capital murder cases cost more than non-capital murder cases.
Okay.
That was just Maryland. But it goes through Nevada.
Okay.
Washington, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, I'm just saying, like, I would have to look over the numbers per se. I want to know why they cost so much more. You know?
Yeah. And the cost of the trial lawyers.
Yeah.
The jury selection. It
right.
gets extremely meticulous.
I'm sure it would vary from state to state as well.
There's all kinds of exorbitant, silly, extra costs.
And a lot of that can be attributed.
So much is on the line, and because if you're on death row. You are in our country, unlike other countries, you are allowed an appeal. So, this jury may have been shitty. It may have been stacked.
Yeah.
Stacked is stacked jury means that it was specifically selected by the prosecution to
give a certain outcome.
Right. So it's like, this guy's X, Y, Z characteristics. So let's find people who hate that, so the prosecution can win. It's sad to think that there's lawyers out there that would do things improperly or be corrupt like that, or just try to win the case. But on one hand, that's their job. On the other hand, lawyers are not perfect because they're people too, and they're probably the least perfect of all.
Right.
People.
So I would want to know. I would want to know why. Like, so the reason why is because it makes sense that it would be more expensive to call for the death penalty, because that way people are only going to call for it if they really think it's justified. I would say.
People? Who are these people?
People who are involved in the trial, the jury. So if someone like,
what if the jury's stacked?
If someone,
a bunch of racists and it's a black guy?
If somebody,
you know what I mean?
Right.
What do they know? They weren't there.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I would want to know why. Like I already said before, I can respect that some jurisdictions would want to get rid of the death penalty based on those factors. Just basically looking at the raw numbers. But I would want to know why. Is it due to corruption? Is it due to needless bureaucracy?
I really think
is it due to people exploiting? Is it people exploiting loopholes? And we're talking. There's 50 states in the U.S. There's 50 states.
Yeah.
Every single one has a different legal climate. Everyone has a different judicial climate. So I mean, like I said earlier in our conversation, any economist worth their salt isn't just gonna look at a flat number like that. They're not just gonna look at, oh, it costs $83 million more to kill someone. Wow, get rid of the death penalty. No, they're gonna dig around and they're gonna see what the underlying causes are there. So just based on those numbers, I think it's worth investigating why it's more expensive. 100% but I can't make the leap from that to saying that capital punishment is never justified.
I don't think that money could ever, for either one of us, for anyone, really be the end all be all deciding factor for this.
Yeah.
Like, if you're for the death penalty or against it, money shouldn't really be your reason.
Right.
I think it's a supplementary reason, though.
Right. It bolsters your case. I get it.
Right.
I get it.
And nothing more.
I
don't think money should ever be the determining factor in things that are so important.
I'm sorry. What was the organization that sources those numbers? I can't. I was reading all about it today. I forgot the name of it.
I'll send you the link.
No. Do you have it? Do you have the title handy?
The link. The title of what?
What the organization that does this research?
This was, each state had a different...
Right, no, but the organization that conducted this research, what was the name of it?
All right, so the site that aggregated all of these studies
it's an organization, a nonprofit.
Death Penalty Information Center.
Yeah, so Death Penalty Information Center. So they're a nonprofit organization based out of Washington, D.C., and they don't have an official stance on capital punishment. What they do, the function that they serve, is to investigate how the capital punishment, how it's carried out, and what the social costs and the financial costs are. And thank God something like that exists, because they're like they're like a watchdog organization. No, that's accountability. No, that's accountability. Oh, okay. But in the fact that they don't make a stance either way, I think that actually gives them credibility.
It's just aggregate information.
It's just information.
You make your own choice based off the information that's there, right?
Yeah.
So we covered the money. See, the reason I prioritized these was because I put them in what I felt was the most important first. So the concept of innocence might be killed.
Yeah.
And then morality as it impacts our society. And then after that, it's like, okay, well, what else? Like, okay, money, costs.
Right.
And another one is, actually, I probably should have put it above the money, is the method that we use. So when we kill these killers, let's assume it's a Jeffrey Dahmer, whatever situation, why don't we just chop their heads off? Why don't we hang them? Why don't we use firing squad? Why don't we use electric chair? Why don't we use piano falling from a 4-story window? You know what I'm saying? Like,
why don't we stuff pineapples up their butts?
I don't know, that kills you. That's probably not necessarily something like that. Right? So why do we choose the method that we do? And for me,
quick clarification. Are you asking that like, well, why do we do this? Or are you honestly asking why we do this?
I'm honestly asking why we do it. Why do we tend to use either electric chair, firing squad is still in the books.
Which is really weird to me.
I think hanging is still in the books and no one ever uses it hardly. And lethal injection is used almost across the board. So let's just take lethal injection, which we might say, well, that's the most like calm and the most like peaceful way, right? Like, so why do we choose that as opposed to a beheading, which is for sure going to kill you, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a lethal injection, we know it can be botched, it can get messed up.
Yeah,
it's happened many times actually at this point, which I feel like is a whole moral conversation within those. Like,
I've heard horror stories.
Yeah, because if you don't put the paralyzing agent in the right time, then the person being executed feels literally like. It feels like fire engulfing their entire body, and now that's like all of a sudden that's a whole other conversation where like, oh my gosh, now we're just like chemically burning.
Let's not call me an asshole, but let's not lose sight of the fact that this is someone who's taken the life of another human being.
Unless they're innocent.
But let's say they've gone through the due process and they've been proven beyond reasonable doubt.
Well, then why not just burn them alive?
They've killed somebody.
Okay, they say they burned someone alive in their house. They raped them and they burned their house, and the victim died burning alive in the house.
Yeah.
So why don't we rape them and then burn them in the little room in the execution room? Like, why don't we? I know it sounds. I'm not trying to be silly. I'm just asking, like, honestly, why don't we do it that way? Why do we elect to do something that's as quick and as calm seemingly as possible? You know, like, what's the difference? Chop his head off. Take a nice, really sharp sword and chop his head off. He's definitely dead.
Yeah.
There's almost no suffering. Job is done. Okay. Justice is served. But we don't. We put it in a little room, very few witnesses. Mm-hmm. We don't broadcast it.
Well, right? We don't broadcast it yet.
Why? Why don't we broadcast it?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I think it's because we're ashamed.
I don't think it's because no, it's not a shameful.
Are we shielding people from it?
I think we just, if people don't want to see it, then we're not going to broadcast it. If they want to see it, then they can.
Actually, I think that if you did broadcast it, it would serve as a better deterrent.
That's an interesting case.
If it's going to be a deterrent, it probably should be broadcasted. But you still have the question of how you're going to do it.
Yeah. Well, why are you asking this?
What method do you use to execute these people, and why?
Okay. What method?
If you were in charge, what would you do?
Okay. That's a great question. I didn't think about this much.
Bullet to the brain. Quick, painless, very messy.
Yeah.
But instant. Right?
I think in some cases I wouldn't broadcast it as in hijack every TV and show it interrupt Golden Girls to show it. I would
my Golden Girls, yeah.
I would maybe make it available like to stream online or something like that.
Would you?
Maybe like in certain cases.
The way ISIS does?
In certain cases maybe. I don't know. Like I'm afraid to really delve into this because I haven't thought much about it and I don't want to say something really stupid.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I could see where making it publicly available would be a socially beneficial thing.
Taxpayer money went for it. Why shouldn't the taxpayers have the ability to?
Or if you're talking cases like Oklahoma City bombing, where thousands of people were affected by it.
But who wants to watch it? That might be the more important question. Who really wants to watch someone be executed?
Well, I mean, people show up to executions to watch someone who took the life of a loved one. They show up to watch that.
How often do you think that they feel better after watching it? This might be an impossibly unanswerable question.
How often do they feel better? I don't know if that's.
It's an internal question.
So to illustrate why what I mean by that. So you go and apologize. Let's say you've done Let's say you. I'm totally blanking here. Let's say you open your car door and dent someone's car, and you go and apologize to them and say, "I'm sorry, I did this," and you have your insurance pay for it. You don't feel better, do you? I mean, maybe you do. You feel better, but you don't necessarily feel good. You just have a sense that you've done the right thing, and you have that off your conscience. So
that actually happened to me literally, and I did.
It's happened to me literally too. I was a kid and I opened a car door, and my mom made me apologize to the lady. And
over here at Greenbelt, I got off the metro. I was pulling out of the parking lot, and I accidentally hit this guy's car.
Yeah.
Put a big scratch on the side of his car, and I could have just took off. Yeah. But I was like, no, I'm gonna do the right thing because I can't sleep at night if I feel like It ended up being really painful. I had to pay a lot of money because it was a really nice car, but I felt good.
Okay, right. You feel good, even if it's bad or. My point I'm trying to make roundabout is, I don't think that. I hope to God I'll never know what it's like to have to sit and watch somebody who took the life of a loved one. I hope I never know what that feels like. And I know that people say anecdotally that people who have had someone murdered, I know, I saw stories like, oh well, if you actually talk to people who have seen that happen, they won't say it. It's not, it doesn't make it up. Really, really, are you sure about that? You're telling me that I don't know. I'm sure I could.
Somebody killed my loved one, my sister, and my brother.
You don't know how you would feel. I'll say this.
I know how I would feel. I wouldn't want them dead. I'd want them to rot in a jail cell. I would.
You don't know how you would
I honestly feel like being killed, is the easy way out.
But here's the thing.
That's my opinion.
Here's the thing. a traumatic situation like that, like I remember the first time I lost a loved one of mine died. It didn't feel the way I thought it would feel at all. It felt completely different than the way it felt. The thing is, you don't know how you really don't know how you'll feel in those situations. It's because
I'm pretty sure I know how I feel, but yeah, you could be right. Maybe.
Yeah, I would.
If someone brutally murdered my sister,
yeah,
I'll be honest. I'd want to, with my bare hands, brutally destroy them.
Yeah,
and probably kill them.
Yeah,
I would want to inflict as much pain on them as I could. I'm this is me speaking very soberly right now, not having this happen. But the thing is once they're in that situation where they are arrested, handcuffed, sitting there in a jail cell, never getting out, I like them in that position, because if I get my hands on them, I'm going to do something that I'm not going to be proud of, and I don't want to become. I don't want to become that thing.
Right.
And I'm happy that we have a justice system that will detain them before I get to them, because I'm probably going to lose my mind in that situation. I'm probably going to go quite primal, because it's my sister, or it's my brother, it's my loved one, and I think that's the definition, or that's one of the signatory features of a civilized society is this guy did a bad thing, this girl did a bad thing, whoever they are, they're detained, they're neutralized. Yeah. They're no longer a threat. Okay. At no point should we ever allow the victims or the victim survivors to dole out punishment or to determine punishment. You may as well rip the blindfold off of Lady Justice herself, so that Lady Justice can come in fully aware and swing the sword in any direction, any way she wants. That would be anarchy, in my opinion. There's a reason she has a blindfold on.
So equal protection of the law in due process. That's something we've agreed to as a society. That's something that we have agreed to.
Justice is blind.
To try to minimize the risk of innocent people getting unjustly punished. Yeah. Okay, so in conclusion, I think that my stance. I mean, it doesn't have to be a conclusion. We are an hour in. There's so much to talk about. We could do a part 2 on this. Okay. To be honest, but
I still have a few more points.
So I would say, like, what I would say is that if someone is proven to be a murderer beyond a reasonable shadow of a doubt, and all indications, everything seems to indicate that the trial was conducted fairly and with integrity, and this person has been convicted.
Isn't often.
But frequently it is. Okay, frequently it is.
All right, sometimes it is, but often it isn't. So that's where we
should talk. Okay. So forget anything I said about that conclusion. We got to talk about this more, because I don't want anyone to accuse me
in a theoretical way. But I'm trying to pull it back to the real world.
Let's go to this article I have. Hey, pup. Hey. You heard us yelling? I won't hurt Nick. It's okay. It's okay. I believe in capital punishment, so I'm deterred from killing him. Right. No, just kidding. No, I have.
If you hurt me, she'll probably rip.
Oh, is there someone at the door? Oh, dude.
She doesn't. No, there's no one at the door. She heard the neighbor's door close or something.
No, I have no desire to inflict any kind of harm on Nick.
No, you don't. Just go ahead.
You don't know that, Nick. No. Okay, so let's talk about corruption, because that's a big part of this discussion.
Okay. Sure.
As someone who, my natural tendency is to be an idealist, and because I am such an idealist, I'm incredibly hurt when my ideals aren't lived up to, and I'm like this paradox of a bitter cynic and an idealist at the same time. It's a very strange existence, which I don't know. Anyways, so when I come across as cynical, it's only because
you're both a big government guy and a small government guy. When it comes to capital punishment, you're a big government guy.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm stuttering. Okay, let's talk about corruption. So, I have this article by David Mulhausen. Oh no, that's not right. Paperwork, pile of papers.
Sorry.
What is this, amateur hour?
You just get a lot of papers.
Yes, I do. Okay. So I have an article by Michael Malkin. It's called Oklahoma's Wretched Record on Wrongful Convictions. So, unfortunately, Oklahoma has a terrible track record when it comes to false accusations and wrongful convictions. It's horrible. But there's a way to handle that. Not a single... Okay, so the author describes Oklahoma City and Oklahoma thus. Judges bend over backwards to preserve so-called harmless errors called by flawed investigations, faulty verdicts, and clerical incompetence. Police brass retaliate against whistleblowers. And, according to one veteran cop, Oklahoma City is a hopeless nest of incestuous nepotism.
Whoa.
Yeah, I would describe Baltimore the same
way. It's really poetic. Really? Oklahoma?
Oklahoma City.
I think that's such like a quaint little place. But,
it's people. It's still people.
Yeah, people are everywhere.
So that's Oklahoma. But there are ways around this. And one of the ways you can have this, he talks about Texas, neighboring Texas, where Dallas County prosecutors founded the first conviction integrity unit in the country, sparking the creation of 30 such agencies nationwide. Compared this to, not a single Oklahoma district attorney's office has established an official mechanism to review tainted convictions. Nor does Oklahoma have anything like the Texas Forsynic Science Commission, which investigates professional misconduct by crime labs and other entities that conduct Forsynic analyses used in criminal proceedings. The Texas panel was created in the wake of the infamous scandal at the Houston Police Department Crime Lab a decade ago, and its audits led to the more recent shutdown of Austin PD's mess of a crime lab. Meanwhile, no systematic reform ensued after the Macy Gilchrist disgrace of Oklahoma. In fact, one of Gilchrist's colleagues, who admitted destroying rape kit evidence at her behest, was kept on for nearly 15 more years until she mysteriously retired last year amid questions about her DNA testimony. So basically, you have Oklahoma, and then this author is contrasting this with Texas, who has set up third-party organizations to perform audits of the criminal justice system to sort of weed out wrongful convictions and tainted investigations and stuff like that. And it's also had some success in reforming the Houston PD and Austin PD. So, I mean, we're talking layers and layers of accountability. I wasn't born yesterday. I'm not a babe in the woods. I know that human systems get corrupted sometimes to a disgraceful level, a level that's so disgraceful that I think that the society has to fail. Like Nazi Germany, for example. Something like 96% of Germans voted Hitler into office. It was an insane percentage of people who voted Hitler into office. In cases like that, when a society is that broken and that corrupt, they bring their punishment on their own heads.
Okay.
But all that to say,
yeah.
There are ways to ensure that due process is observed. There are ways to hold people accountable. There's ways where precision to carry out more precise policing, and I think that's what we need to focus our energy on.
I think that should always be a focus.
Yeah. And the other point is that not all every jurisdiction is different.
Sure.
Has different levels of corruption.
So, right.
Yeah.
But which of those systems doesn't have any corruption?
I would say 0.
Right.
Yeah.
See, so this is why I feel like, as much as I would love to go to like this theoretical realm of, well, as long as all the evidence is there and it's all like laid out, it's very straightforward. Well, then kill them. Even if I was on board with the concept of killing the person, if I was, let's say I was, then okay, all that other stuff is taken care of. But I don't see that happening in the real world ever at any point. There's never going to be a point where it's like, see, Idaho, they are the one state in the U.S. who has no corruption. They got their DNA on point. They don't have any police interrogation style, like forced testimony kind of stuff going on. No tampering of evidence. No judge didn't eat his breakfast, so he's got a grumbly in his tumbly, and he's coming up on election season, and he's going to execute more people because election season is coming up. I think even if one of those factors is at play, and it's usually more than one of those factors, it's always going to cause a leaning at best. It's going to be a lean towards a corrupt system that is killing people. We're trusting a big government that's imperfect. Even if you say it's state governments, I'm still calling them big governments. In the state of Maryland, it's a big government. To us, it may as well be. If it's taking your life, that's a big government. It's a big brother putting the axe on you. And I just don't think it's legitimate. I think it's inappropriate, and I think it's too much. It's too much power to give to a government. It's bad enough that they can exact taxes indiscriminately, and that tends to get out of hand. It's bad enough that a federal government can take us on crusades. That in retrospect are like, why did we even do that? My God, that was a waste of money and treasure and blood. And
so you're really going down the libertarian argument on this.
I'm going down.
So you're saying that the argument.
No, why is that a libertarian necessarily?
So
I really feel like
I don't want to I think the libertarian argument is that the government shouldn't have the power to take a human life.
The government should not have. We should not grant the government the power to take the life of a person who is in custody, neutralized, arrested. Rather, they should imprison them, and the threat is gone.
I guess I disagree with that.
Yeah, well, I disagree with that. Fundamental disagreement, right?
Yeah, it's a fundamental disagreement.
Yeah. All right. So, can I move on to another point?
Go for it. Yeah.
So we've gone over quite a bit, quite thoroughly through the moral concepts. We talked about the taxpayer money. What about the concept of and big government giving them the power to kill, knowing that the judicial system is capricious across the board. There's no perfect state government. There's no perfect judicial system. There's no perfect judge, jury. I've got cases here where here's a lawyer who was working a death penalty case, and he straight up just showed up drunk to the trial. He fell asleep often. And he took 20 shots of vodka, this one guy.
Okay.
Robert Wayne Holsey. This guy's name should be known.
Okay.
Robert Wayne Holsey was represented at his murder trial by an alcoholic lawyer who was under investigation at the time for stealing $100,000. Okay, the lawyer stole $100,000 later. Some sort of grifter.
Okay.
From a client he drank a quart of vodka, 20 shots every night during the trial. Okay. So you say, you and me both agree. That should not be allowed. How is that even happening?
It's
happening,
okay. It's illegal. If someone does that, the odds of somebody getting away with that is so incredibly rare. It's an incredible rarity.
It happened.
Obviously, it happened. But that kind of thing doesn't happen every day.
So in 1997, the American Bar Association. So that's all the lawyers, like the Grand Council of lawyers for the whole country,
Yeah.
They called on all jurisdictions to cease the death penalty until the system is actually reliable. And thus far, they have not issued any sort of statement saying that they now feel that we're reliable enough. This is the American Board of Lawyers, like the Bar Association, right?
Okay.
So they're calling for that. It's like, well, these are the lawyers. Like the lawyers themselves are saying, the system is not perfect. We shouldn't be prosecuting.
Well, okay. Again, I have to say I'm a skeptic. I can't help it. I would want to know more about the organization. I want to know more about the organization. Now, if it turns out that if I determine in my limited wisdom and understanding that their claim, that what they say is justified, I can get behind that. If you think that a justice system is so corrupt that all capital punishment should be available, I can get on board with that. It's just that's a separate discussion from whether or not capitalism is sometimes justified.
Capital punishment.
That's two different discussions. Whether sometimes it's the morally right thing to do to end someone's life versus a justice system has become so corrupt that we need to pause capital punishment. That's something that that I would be happy to discuss, and I want to know more about it. But those are two separate conversations.
Okay. No, I
justice
totally,
reform. Yeah.
Totally feel on that.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Next, going in my next topic, because I feel like we talked about the imperfect government thing plenty now.
Okay.
Imperfect trials, imperfect government, imperfect shows. Okay. My next topic is the next point is mental illness inequality. So.
Inequity. There's a difference.
Inequity. Yeah. So. Individuals who are mentally ill, there has been many cases of that throughout U.S. history where mentally ill people who are in no way, shape, or form capable of defending themselves or even receiving sound counsel, even if they have a great lawyer, they're not capable of making sound choices because they're mentally ill, right? So there has been cases, I got sources cited here. mentalhealthamerica.net /positions/death penalty. It has a lot of cases there where police took advantage of the fact that this person was mentally ill. They literally talked them into admitting guilt into walking right into the execution chamber, right? This, I guess we could take this back to the corruption thing.
Yeah.
And we need to reform.
They're separate. Yeah, they're separate conversations.
Sure. Okay.
Separate conversations.
All right,
now, and I would say like a mental illness inequity, something like this. If someone's mental illness leads them to be a pathological threat to society, then in some cases, definitely not all, or even most, I would say, it is probably the right thing to give them the death penalty. I'm talking like someone's a raving lunatic and they're like they're a pathological axe murderer.
There's no way to corral them.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say, let's try to figure out a way to corral them.
It's just like we need to
rabid dog.
This person, we need to remove this person from existence. That's just the right thing to do.
Okay.
That sometimes that would be okay. Now, when it goes back to corruption. Like if we're having people who are taking advantage of someone's mental illness to trick them into something, that's not right. That's horrible. Absolutely, it's horrible.
Abysmal.
Yeah, if a system has deteriorated so much that that's something that's a regular thing, then I would want to do more research, but I could see I think there's a very strong argument that you want to pause capital punishment in a situation like that.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's regularly occurring, but for me, my threshold for that is super low.
Okay.
All it takes is one or two, and I'm like, ho, put the brakes on this bad boy, because you're spraying Roundup all over the lawn right now, and we need to just like switch from Roundup to like vinegar or whatever low-level weed killer, because I'd rather there be a few weeds that
kill people,
a few weeds that live in prison.
Okay.
Then, along with these innocents who will also occupy the prison cells, but at least they'll have there's a chance that can be vindicated. They can be saved.
Okay.
You know? All right. So that's the case of mental illness. And then my last point was
race and conviction rates, racial inequity in the justice system.
Right.
Okay. This is a whole other conversation. I haven't.
This is a heavy one.
I haven't drawn my conclusions on this yet. I have had enough conversations and seen enough anecdotal evidence to see that I do think that there is systematic racism in the justice system. It's just a question of how much it is. You know, and when you talk about certain races being more likely to be condemned to the death penalty, I would want to see the individual cases to make my point, or to make up before I would make up my mind about that.
Okay, I'll share all the sources.
Okay, let me get my sources.
I'll just go through a few little statistics here, though. In Louisiana, the odds of a death sentence were 97% higher for those whose victim was white than for those whose victim was black. Think about that.
Okay.
This is according to Pierce and Radelet, the Louisiana Law Review, year 2011.
Yeah, considering it's Louisiana, that doesn't surprise me.
Right.
Yeah.
Oddly,
no. Okay, but I do want to make this point. Again, I want to. Again, there's a lot of jurisdictions in the U.S. There's 50 states. Each one there's counties, cities, and towns.
Right.
So to
each state
say
if they have death penalty.
like I said, the discussion of corruption in the justice system is one that's worth having, but you have to draw distinctions between between individual jurisdictions. To say that Louisiana appears to be, go for it. You want that? It's all yours. Yeah. We're fighting over the last Canada Dry sparkling seltzer water. But to say that Louisiana, it appears that Louisiana is discriminating against African Americans, because I have the data here that indicates that overall, when you look at the U.S. as overall, white on white crime is more likely to be punished than black on black crime. Let me go through.
White on white's more likely than black on black.
Hold on. Don't get all bent out of shape yet. I gotta find my sources real quick.
I don't get bent.
We'll fix this in post.
I flex.
That's right.
We'll fix this in post. Heck no, this is raw.
Okay, so. Okay, alleged racial discrimination in capital punishment sentences. This is from a congressional testimony by David Mulhausen. This was published June 27, 2007. He's a research fellow in empirical policy analysis at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., which I hope to work for soon.
I live close to there. You want to work for the government?
No, they're not the government. Oh. They don't receive any government funding.
Oh, nonprofit.
Yeah, 501c3, boy. 80% funded by individuals. So, anyways. Okay, so let's talk about alleged racial discrimination capital punishment sentences. According to this guy's congressional testimony, as of December 2005, there were 37 prisoners under a sentence of death in the federal system. Of these prisoners, 43.2% were white, while 54.1% were African American. And I just want to add that 13% of the U.S. is African American. So that's clearly a disproportional representation by African Americans on death row. The fact that African Americans are a majority of federal prisoners on death row and a minority in the overall United States population may lead some to conclude that the federal system discriminates against African Americans. However, according to this man, there's little rigorous evidence that such disparities exist in the federal system. So when you see a disparity like
federal system,
yeah, in the federal system, you have to dig. You have to look at the reasons why for those numbers. You can't just say, "Oh, these numbers exist, therefore this." You don't do that.
Why are you talking about federal numbers? I'm lost.
Because I'm trying to look at the big picture here. Under a competitive grant process, the National Institute of Justice awarded the Rand Corporation a grant to determine whether racial disparities exist in the federal death penalty system. The resulting 2006 RAND study set out to determine what factors, including the defendant's race, victim's race, and crime characteristics, affect the decision to seek a death penalty case. 3 independent teams of researchers were tasked with developing their own methodologies to analyze the data. Only after each team independently drew their own conclusions did they share their findings with each other. When first looking at the raw data without controlling for case characteristics, Rand found that large race effects with the decision to seek the death penalty are more likely to occur when the defendants are white and when the victims are white. However, these disparities disappeared in each of the 3 studies when the heinousness of the crimes. I feel so stupid right now.
#heinous.
The crimes was taken into account. The RAND study concludes that the findings support the view that the decisions to seek the death penalty are driven by characteristics of crimes rather than by race. Does that make sense? So basically, when you account for the severity of the crime rather than strictly the race, then the disparities are significantly reduced. Rand's findings are very compelling because 3 independent research teams using the same data but different methodologies reached the same conclusions. So let me just scan this real quick. I could read the whole article, which would be fascinating, but
we'd all love that.
Yeah. So in May 2001, Maryland State instituted a moratorium on the use of capital punishment because it appeared to be disproportionately targeting African Americans.
That wasn't the only reason, but yeah.
Yeah, but the governor commissioned University of Maryland professor of criminology Ray Paternoster to study the possibility of racial discrimination in the application of the death penalty in Maryland, and the results found that black defendants who murder white victims are substantially more likely to be charged with a capital crime and sentenced to death. Eventually, the moratorium was lifted in 2003, and a review of the study by the University of Maryland by the professor of statistics and sociology of the University of California, Los Angeles, and his co-authors found that the results of Professor Paternoster's study do not stand up to statistical scrutiny. According to Professor Burke's reanalysis, for both capital charges and death sentences, race either played no role or a small role that is very difficult to specify. In short, it is very difficult to find convincing evidence for the racial effects in the Maryland data, and if there are any, they may not be additive. Further, race may have a small influence because cases with a black defendant and a white victim or other racial combination are less likely to have a death sentence. So what we have here is we have Louisiana, and based on what you told me, it appears that there's definitely an element of racism. It does appear that black on white crime is disproportionately that's wrong. That's evil. Yeah. But you also have this case in Maryland where that was found not to be the case by University of California, Los Angeles, which, by the way, I want to add is a very hard left-leaning school.
Okay, I have a California stat for you too.
Okay, hold on. But my point I'm making is that when it comes to you have to I have no doubt that there are jurisdictions where the racial disparities are there, but there are also other jurisdictions where the racial disparities do not stand up to rigorous scrutiny.
Okay,
it's a case by case thing. Too long didn't read. It's a case by case.
With the death penalty, honestly, when it comes to the data, you really need to go state by state, I think.
Yeah.
And to give yourself a real good concept of how this is impacting the states, you got to go state by state.
Yeah, and I could see a situation where the federal government would intervene and stop states from carrying out capital punishment until there are certain reforms are made. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, good point. Do you think that this is the type of thing that should be relegated to the federal government, just like marriage, right? Marriage has now become like the Supreme Court's
federal
rule,
issue, yeah.
You know, or I mean, other random things, abortion. So, what about the death penalty?
I don't know much about. I could see that. I think the death penalty would be a prime candidate for a state by state decision.
Okay.
So some states would be like, yes, we want capital punishment.
And they do it.
And other states would be like, no, we don't want it. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the United States is that that's what the plan was supposed to be, is having it. It's like 50 social experiments,
okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know a whole lot about constitutional law. I don't know if the federal government has the authority to intervene, but I do think that there would need to be accountability for states to make sure that their judicial systems are free of corruption as far as possible. So they would have to be accountable. So if
there'd have to be some sort of oversight committee,
right?
That's a federal entity that goes through each 50 states. It's like, are you doing it right? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it right? Are you corrupt? Are you corrupt? Are you corrupt? So periodically they get investigated or audited or something of the sort.
Or there needs to be something where if someone says that their wife or husband has been falsely accused of murder, there needs to be someone that they can turn to for protection. Now, I don't know if a federal agency is the answer to that. I don't know much about constitutional law, so I know that the federal government is only supposed to have a certain defined abilities.
It's a careful balance.
Right? Yeah.
It not only is state and local authority and power should be balanced. We need to, as the people, we need to always be. We have to be constantly vigilant of these things.
And I think capital punishment is one of those issues that has compelling arguments on either side. So in a case like that, it makes sense that it would be state by state decisions.
Right. Based off of who's elected, those elected officials are entrusted with the decision making power.
Or what the population believes is right.
Or a vote. Yeah. It's put on the ballot.
Yeah.
You vote for so and so for judge, so and so for senator, and then this measure saying, should we have the death penalty or not? Maryland voted to get rid of it.
Well, they actually reinstated it.
So have other states. Maryland reinstated it?
Oh, no. Sorry, I'm getting that mixed up. Never mind.
Louisiana.
Carry on.
Okay, so here's the California stat that I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
A study in California by the Santa Clara Law Review, year 2005, a little old.
Yeah.
A study in California found that those convicted of killing whites were more than 3 times as likely to be sentenced to death as those convicted of killing blacks, and more than 4 times more likely as those convicted of killing Latinos. Right? Yeah. California, a lot of mixture of white, black, and Latino folks.
It's a very diverse state.
So you're 3 times more likely to be sentenced if you kill a white person than those convicted of killing blacks, and 4 times more likely as those that were convicted of killing Latinos. So
again,
Santa Clara Law Review 2005, Pierce and Radele. Pierce, Pierce, and Radele, Radelet.
So again, like I said, any economist worth their salt is going to look. They're going to dig into those numbers and see what's going on.
This is not an economist question. This is a criminologist.
Well, it's tomato. Okay. Any criminologist worth their salt, they're going to dig into it. I would say taking that data at face value, Nick, that looks really bad. I'm not going to lie, but I would want to know why. Like what's causing the disparities? Because, I mean. People don't like white people. Maybe they're just killing white people, especially violently. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Well, people do like white people because if you kill a white person, you're 3 times more likely to be sentenced to death.
But why? You have to look at the underlying causes. And
Sure.
Based on that here's the problem. Okay, so I've seen enough statistics like this that I don't automatically.
We're all working with the studies.
I don't automatically trust these numbers, right?
Okay.
So for me to have any like strong conclusions on this, I would for myself.
Hours of research.
I would want to know a little. I would want to know not even a whole lot more, just a little bit more about why this is happening.
No, you're absolutely right. You know? And by all means, anyone listening, this goes way beyond the scope of this conversation, this podcast. Mm-hmm. This is a topic that deserves your attention, your full attention, your full investigation, and to really take these topics and these points that we've brought up and really ask yourself intrinsically, like, do I feel like this is moral? Do I feel like this matches my ethical values? Do I feel like this
is a proper
deterrent? Is it really a deterrence? Is it really justice? Those are important questions I think every citizen
and I would say yes and yes
needs to ask. Yeah. And read the cases of Cameron Willingham and Troy Davis and George
read other
Stinney.
Cases and also read about Jeffrey
people.
Dahmer and Ted Bundy. We're talking the people, like horrible evil people.
Okay.
So if you're gonna take if you're gonna go with stories, which are they're very powerful, read stories on both sides.
Carlos de Luna.
Read stories about people who have been falsely accused, and the toll that they're going. That's fair. Yeah,
they were innocent,
but also read stories about families who have watched murder their families, their loved ones, murderers, go free or live good lives in prison. Like read those stories too. And also look at the empirical data and dig through the numbers. Don't take the numbers for face value. Look for the underlying causes.
Another important thing to realize when you talk about the families and if they're getting closure, right? Let's say the family deserves closure. Yeah. And this might come back to the family
deserves justice. It's not just closure.
Sure.
That's another distinction that we didn't really get into. It's not the same thing. Okay. Justice. This is where we're venturing into metaphysical territory again.
Same both justice and closure. Okay, family deserves both of those things. Let's just say that they deserve both of those things. They're not being served by someone that gets to appeal year after year after year. The family might die of old age before this person's actually executed on death row.
Yeah.
Right? And you might say, well, why do they get so much time on death row? Why do they get to appeal over and over again? Because that's the way our system works. You get to appeal. If you feel like you didn't have a fair trial, you get the right to appeal.
Yeah.
So they're not watching that they're... You could say, well, they need to see that person die, and that's going to give them closure, and it's going to give them a sense of justice. Like, well, that's why we don't write laws and punitive measures according to the victim's desires, Because like I said, if somebody hurt my sister, I'm going to claw their eyes out. Yeah. I'm going to destroy them. And later, guess what? I'm going to feel bad about that because...
Well, okay, we'd have to go into like the metaphysical territory of justice. That's another one of the key differences between you and I, and we should probably wrap it up because I'm getting tired and I got to get to bed soon. But one of the key differences between you and me, and I know this is a great conversation. We could do a part 2. We really could.
Metaphysical is a good
concept. One of the key differences, as I've said before, is I believe that there is a supernatural precedent for justice, and when people are deprived of justice, it's equally as destructive as depriving someone of food or of water or shelter.
What about forgiveness?
Equally damaging.
What about forgiveness? What about when someone doesn't have forgiveness in their heart?
What?
I gotcha.
No, I don't understand what you're saying.
If somebody trespasses against you and you don't turn the other cheek and you don't grant forgiveness to the person who trespassed against you, can't that be spiritually destructive for you? Isn't it important also to
forgive people?
I'm not even saying you need to forgive. I'm not telling anyone to forgive anyone. I'm just saying the concept of forgiveness.
If someone there's a difference. If someone sincerely asks for forgiveness, then you can. You can decide to forgive them or not.
Right.
And under the Christian morality, you are supposed to forgive them. But if someone doesn't ask for your forgiveness,
you're not obligated though, but it's still free will. You can
Yeah, but the other thing too though that Christians believe is that justice is going to happen. So whatever fate I have, all the wrong things that I have done, I will receive justice for that, because it's like the laws of physics, the laws of economics, whatever. It's simply going to happen. That's just how it is. It's a force of nature. I'm going to receive justice for that. So the way I see it, if someone who has power doesn't bring justice, then they are interfering with a natural force, and it's going to have there's going to be externalities, like building a dam in the middle of it. It's going to damage nature. It's just going to happen.
You're saying an elected official needs to exact the justice that you require. Otherwise, they have...
Well, no, I mean whatever the actual right thing is. I don't mean... And I think that there are concrete standards of justice. So again, the opposite goes as well. If someone takes unjustified revenge, then that's another form of injustice, and that's just as damaging.
This begs my question of if it's eye for an eye, like you're saying, right?
I'm not saying that it's an eye for an eye.
Oh, okay.
I don't mean that.
So you don't have to rape a rapist, but you do have to kill a killer, right?
I can't. I mean, it's not like yin and yang. That's not what I'm saying. Like I don't say that. What I'm saying is that punishment is given to a person, like for each individual crime, every crime and every person is different, and the appropriate punishment is different for every person and every crime. Like, for example, I remember one time as a kid, I got in trouble because I did something I wasn't supposed to do. And I spent that whole day dreading when I was going to have to talk to my dad about it. And when my dad called me to talk about it, I just cried and cried and cried uncontrollably. And my dad was like, "Okay, you're good. You're fine. You've clearly been punished enough." That was enough for me. Yeah, you could say that justice had been done. See, that compared, like say that compared to me doing the bad thing and then being unrepentant about it or doing it again over and over and over again, the punishment in that situation would just be different. And I think it's the same way for murder as well. I don't think that execution is automatically the just thing to do for murder. I think that it's only in some cases.
Rare, seldom.
Yeah, justified cases. Does that make sense? I don't believe an eye for an eye. I don't believe in that.
I don't either.
Because
eye for an eye means rape for a rape. And I'm not raping anyone. I'm not paying the judge to rape anyone. I'm not paying the executioner to rape the guy. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not obviously. It's like, we laugh about it, but the same, for me, it's the same approach. It's like, and also, I don't want beheadings. ISIS-style beheadings. Right. Although that would probably be the most humane way. The quickest, fastest, surest way.
No one really knows what it's like to be beheaded because everyone who's been beheaded has died.
You might be alive for 10 seconds and look around and
like, oh, this is weird.
Well, it couldn't be any worse.
Why didn't anyone tell me my butt was that big?
Compare that, though, to they inject that stuff into your veins and your body feels like it's on fire. You know? I don't think that there's such thing as a humane way to kill someone.
Yeah. The question is, when is it right to take a human life?
Yeah,
and you would say never.
I would say in self-defense when you're trying to defend yourself. That's it.
Okay.
But when someone's in handcuffs and they're in a prison cell, nah. Mm-hmm. Killing them, in my opinion, is completely morally bereft.
And I would say that it's a case by case, and there are times when
Jeffrey Dahmer.
I would say there are cases when the appropriate punishment is to end that person's life. Mm-hmm. I would say that that's just how it is, and it's a case by case thing.
And like we said at the beginning, this is a thing that every single one of us, any responsible citizen should at some point or another come across this specific topic and make their determination and make their decision about it. Research it as much as they can. Look at the stories. Look at the stories of the innocent that were executed. Look at the stories of the bad guys, like you said.
Yeah.
The Gacy's
and everything in between.
The Ted Bundys and look up Troy Davis. Look up Cameron Willingham, George Stinney. Look up John Wayne Gacy. Look up Ted Bundy. Look up Jeffrey Dahmer. Consider all of that, and then decide what is for you. What is justice? What is the moral way to handle punitive action against people who may or may not be innocent, who may or may not be guilty. And at the end of the day, it's just an imperfect system. But it's all we got. But we got to keep that blindfold on, Lady Justice, in my opinion. Like, no matter what, we all have to stay on that level.
Equal treatment under the law in due process. And human rights and stuff.
Non-stop.
So eloquent.
Non-stop maintenance, non-stop.
Yeah.
Just vigilance,
accountability, checks and balances,
keeping the elected officials accountable.
Yeah, that's something we all have to do.
It can't stop.
And I think that's what's scary is we're afraid of the responsibility that we have.
Yeah,
and we're afraid
of them so much.
The work ethic it takes to keep it up, to keep on top of all that. Yeah. So.
All right, well, that's a good way to end it.
All right,
that's capital punishment. Also known as, a.k.a. the death penalty. Are we ever going to do another episode on this?
Maybe someday.
Did we? I mean, it's a good conclusion.
Yeah.
Did we leave any stone unturned?
Well, okay. I do have to go to bed at some point, but the very concept of justice in its most fundamental sense. That's something that I've realized I haven't put much thought into.
You can get pretty deep. If you want to take it, you can go deep.
Yeah, we can go very deep. And I have theory. We've talked about stuff like that, but that's something that it would be interesting to sort of think about that and see what philosophers and theologians
easiest one is
had to say.
Hitler, what does he deserve? Well, he got out easy because he cyanide pill, bullet, he's out. But in the metaphysical realm, what's happening to Hitler right now?
Yeah. And I have relatives who are Christians, and they believe that hell doesn't exist. They think that it's a construct that was created to keep up the patriarchy or something like that. I wish I could believe that, but I just don't think that that's true. But anyways, yeah, justice.
You want to,
in a metaphysical sense.
I think it's a very human thing to want to believe that, okay, this person died, but they're getting their just desserts. It's happening somewhere.
I don't.
Somehow,
no, I don't. So
getting justice.
That may be how you think of it. I don't think of it in those terms. I think of it.
I think even from a Christian perspective, you shouldn't think about things like that. Like even if you believe in the concepts of like eternal love and forgiveness, it should be a hope for a rehabilitation for all souls, right? Even Hitler, even as bad as
right. So I don't like. It's more like how do I explain this? It's just something like, there's a compelling case for this thing existing. I should consider it at least, and I'm open to the fact that maybe it doesn't exist. But I'm not fully convinced yet.
Okay.
It's like global warming, for example.
It's like a lot of things.
It's like global warming. It's like, there's a very compelling case that it exists, but there's some alarmism, there's some extremism that is kind of stupid. You definitely see people
going crazy with it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to go there with you.
And there's a compelling case saying that it's all myth, but I'm not sure I can buy into that fully. Yeah, so I'm just kind of like somewhere in the middle, you know?
The ones who say it's a myth, you're like, well, how do I know you're right?
Exactly.
And then the people who say, no, it's absolutely happening, it's so bad. Oh my God, we're going to curb emissions in 5 years. Okay, well, you're crazy too. Is there something in the between I can find my little home at? Yeah.
By the way,
maybe this is another one of those topics.
Yeah, that'd be fun to talk about. My conclusion is that climates always change. Humans probably impact to a certain extent. And we should stay flexible. We should be ready for anything.
For me, it's like there's no way that humans don't have an impact. You know,
but socialism still doesn't work, and socialism isn't going to solve global warming.
Right. All right.
So, anyways, we should wrap it up.
Yeah.
But anyway, good conversation.
See you next time, guys.
Bye.